I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna shock you. Rendering is more important than modeling. Now, don't get me wrong, modeling skills, you need to have them, right? But if you cannot present your models correctly and in a really, interesting way, your chances of getting hired or noticed are going down dramatically because there's so much competition out there, all right? So I would say that you should really put some time into learning how to render correctly, how to operate with lighting, how to frame your renders, how to post-process your renders in order to make your portfolio really shine. Because people who are gonna look at your portfolio are like chicks in a bar, do you know what I mean? If you're gonna look clean and you're gonna have nice clothes, you're gonna smell nice, you have a better chance of pulling. If you look like a, mingled schlump, good luck, okay? So if your portfolio looks like shit, it ain't gonna happen. So you need to have a decent folio, and even if your skills in modeling aren't that great, you have higher chances of getting hired because people will perceive you as a person who likes to deliver, okay? Who likes to, push things to the end, can finish the project. You take pride in what you do. So now in this video, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give you some solid tips on rendering that gonna instantly improve your rendering game. Now, if you're new to Blender, starting with rendering probably isn't the best idea, which is why you should click on the link in the video description and grab our free course, which is called Hard Surface Jumpstart in Blender. And in just a few hours, you're gonna learn all the foundations of Blender, hard surface, modeling, all that. We have close to 90,000 students in the program right now, and they love it. So like I said, the course is free. Link is in the video description. Go ahead and grab it. Going back to rendering, let's start with building a very simple scene. So we have a plane, we have a cube. First of all, you want to render in cycles, not in Eevee, because Eevee is junk. It's just a fake array. You want cycles because cycles will give you really nice, beautiful, clean, realistic renders, okay, with beautiful lighting. Now, secondly, what you want to do here, you want to switch from CPU to GPU. You want your graphic card to do all the heavy lifting. Otherwise, rendering is going to take 2 weeks, okay? Now, under sampling here, you want to go with 300 samples. You don't need more than that unless you do an ArcViz. And you want to turn on the noise. It's going to, nuke all the fireflies, all the junk, all the noise from the image, okay? Then on the light path, this is really important. This basically tells Blender how many bounces, so how many passes of light, how many times light bounces around the scene before it actually is baked into render, okay? So you want to go quite high here, maybe not too high. My settings are an overkill, so don't follow me if you don't have a beefy rig. But honestly, 12 here, 8, 8, 8, 8 is more than you're gonna ever need, okay? You don't need volume because you're not gonna be using volumetrics unless you do. So you can, drop it to 0. The same with, for example, transparency and transmission. If you're not using glass or decals, you can just drop it to 0, okay? Now, next thing is gonna be format. You wanna change your settings here. This is basically, the ratio of your render. 16:9 if you go in horizontal, or 21:9, you wanna go cinematic. It's gonna look beautiful and sort of really inviting, okay? You don't go square format. Square format is really difficult to master. That's 1. 2 is very boring, okay? So, don't drop your Instagram crop images onto your proper portfolio. Just go with 16:9, trust me. Unless you go in vertical, then you can go, 2:3 or whatever. Then you're gonna go here and switch your settings from PNG to TIFF, 16-bit and no compression. This is gonna give you better quality, way better quality of toning and tonal shifts in your render, and it's gonna give you a better head start in terms of editing your renders in Photoshop. And you should edit your renders in Photoshop because that's what gives them this final zing, okay? You can actually set everything in Blender to a degree with compositing, but honestly, the time required to do it with nodes is just retarded. You just want to go to Photoshop, click a few things, and you're done. Now let's click here on the render tab, and this is what you're gonna see. First of all, you need mattes. Secondly, you need light. So let's just add light, okay? So now you have 2 ways of adding light in Blender. Actually 3. One of them is going to be by adding regular lights here, which I would not recommend because they're not realistic, okay? So you can just add a sun or spotlight or area light and light your model like this. Now, another way of lighting scene would be with IES maps, which is a real-life lighting baked onto a file, and you plug it into a Blender light and project it in Blender. Now, if you're not rendering ArcViz stuff, you don't have to worry about it. But if you do look into IES lights, I'm actually covering IES lights in our course Rendering University, which goes in great depth into rendering, framing, lighting, composition, angles, visual weight, balance, all this stuff. If you're really serious about rendering, grab this course because it's fantastic. Third method is gonna be the most popular one, which is HDRI files, and that's what we're gonna be doing. Okay, so we're gonna pull this window here, so hover over here until your mouse cursor changes, pull it up, go here, change to shade editor, go here, world, and you're gonna see two nodes. Now, what I want you to do is go here to edit preferences, enable an add-on called Node Wrangler. It comes with Blender, right? So click here and save preferences. This will allow you to click on this any node really here and use shortcuts in the shade editor. Okay, so we're gonna click here, press Ctrl T, and this will add these three nodes, which will help us to add and control the HDRI. Okay, so we're gonna click here, and now we're gonna add a very basic HDRI, one that I'm using quite often. It's called Abandon's Slipaway. It's free. You can get it on polyheaven.com. Now, the reason why I'm using this render is because the lighting is super flat and it's really easy to control, and I suggest you start with that kind of lighting. Okay. So let me show you. I'm gonna click here and I'm going to go to my desktop and grab the HDRI, which is here, and I'm going to load in my Abandoned Slipaway. Okay, and the moment I do that, you can see that a light actually appeared in our scene, and you can see that HDRI, if you're gonna go to Render tab, go to Film and uncheck Transparency, so you can actually see that, rotate the scene, and you can see you know, how this lighting actually works. It's kind of like a real life light projected onto the scene. Now you can see that the light is flat, meaning there are no harsh shadows and no harsh highlights. The entire sky is overcast and it acts like a massive softbox. The light source is somewhere there because that's the brightest point in the sky. But nonetheless, the lighting is pretty flat. It's, you know, almost non-directional, almost. Okay, so let's just turn it off and let's get back here. Now we need some mattes. Okay, so I'm gonna be adding mattes with our add-on, which is called Material Works, but you can do it here. In fact, our add-on also supports the HDRI files. Don't have this updated here, but if I'm gonna go to Blender 4.1, I can show you. Let me just copy this. Copy objects. By the way, you can copy objects from one Blender to another if you didn't know. That's pretty convenient. Okay, and if I'm gonna go here, you can see that I have an option to actually turn on HDRI with add-on, and I can also change the HDRI. These HDRI maps come with the add-on. They're made by Alex Sanchel, and you can, you know, just plug and play basically. You can also rotate your HDRI and do all kinds of different stuff in here. Now let's go back to this Blender and let's do it manually. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're going to add some mattes. So I'm gonna go here and add some metal. If you don't have this add-on, you can just go here to the Material tab and just add new, and simply, you know, change the color of the matte and you're gonna be good to go. Okay, I'm gonna change it to something different, like let's say coated titanium or whatever. Let's actually make this one brighter. Okay, so shiny plastic, there we go, that's good. All right, awesome. So now how do I think when I render? Okay, first of all, what you need to do is you need to set the angle of the camera. So from which angle, from which elevation, from what perspective you want to shoot. So if this is the front of our model, I will be shooting from more or less this angle. Now why? From this angle I can see almost all sides of my model. Okay, I can see the front, I can see the top, and I can see the side, right? So with one render, one image, I can actually present my model very well, and it will show basically almost the entire design language, right? You know, if you shoot from the front, it could be very interesting as well, but this usually is a good idea. Now let's talk about the elevation of camera. I think this is a good angle, something like this. So it's not too high, it's not too low, right? It's kind of in between. And again, I can show all three sides of my model. So now let's just put a camera in the scene. Normally in Blender Vanilla, what you need to do is press Shift-A and add a camera here. And then you just need to move the camera to a position, and it's really annoying. So we're not gonna be using that. We're gonna be using an add-on called Machine Tools, which used to be free, now it costs like 10 bucks. But trust me, you wanna get it. I have 2 massive videos showing how to use this add-on and why is it so powerful. It's going to save you a shit ton of time, and time is money. So 10 bucks is nothing compared to how much time and headache you're gonna save, okay? So once you get the add-on, what you wanna do is you wanna go here to Preferences. You wanna go to Machine Tools, and you want to enable here under Preferences the View Spy, okay? Because that's responsible for the camera. Machine Tools comes with some of these menus disabled. You need to enable them in order to use them. So press page down, camera from view, which is going to align our camera perfectly to our view, which is fantastic. Page down and lock to view. And now what I can do, I can actually move my camera, click on my cube, and I can sort of fine-tune my framing here, okay? So now let's talk about how do I think about framing when I'm shooting. What am I paying attention to? I'm usually looking at negative space. Negative space is everything around your model, right? It's basically all this stuff around your model. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to balance how the negative space, so the surroundings of the model, look in my frame, right? It's really important. There's a lot of people focusing on the model, which is why they mostly place stuff in the center like this, and they're gonna render, you know, like this. Is very boring, very static. You want to introduce some dynamic feel to your render. You want to offset things a little bit to left or the right to create some dynamic feel. Okay, watch some videos, movies, etc., and see how things are being framed in the camera, and you'll soon notice that things are very often offset. Okay, to the left, to the right, to the top, to the bottom, because that's what kind of breaks the symmetry and monotony of the frame and introduces a lot of dynamic kind of a feel to it, okay? So that's what you want. You want to offset your stuff a little bit, okay? Now, if your model is facing a specific direction, in our case, this is a face of a model. Every model has a face. It's facing this way, right, to the right, which means we need to leave more space on the right, okay? Because our eyes and our mind will automatically think, well, where is it looking at? Okay, where is it facing to? And we need this space. We need to open this space here in order to make this render feel more natural. This is not a good idea, especially if the light is coming from this side. Now, if the lighting was coming from this side, this would be the front of the model, okay, because it's brighter. But because the lighting is actually coming from this side, okay, from the right side, we need to offset it to the left. Like I said, I'm talking in depth about this in our course, Rendering University. So if you're serious about rendering, I highly recommend you get this course because it's fucking amazing. So let me just unplug this from the view here, and I'm gonna show you something, okay? So let's go here to Film and Transparent, and you see that I told you that the lighting, even though it's flat, there is a direction to it, and the light comes from there mostly, okay? So the brightest spot on the sky is over there. So we're creating an angle between the light angle and the camera, okay? So we're creating like a maybe, you know, between 90 to 45 angle, okay? Between the direction of the light and direction of the camera, in order to catch really nice highlights and really nice shadows, which is why this face is brighter than this one, okay? So when I press 0 on my numpad, I can jump back into it and see that this face is a tad brighter than this. This is why we are framing this from this angle, okay? Now, if your lighting is, you know, too dark, you can actually pump it up in here. So let's increase it to 1.2 or even 1.4, okay? To make it a bit brighter. This looks a little bit better. Because when you render something and bring it to Photoshop, you don't want it to be too dark, okay? You want to have some kind of a room to bring it up or down in terms of contrast or brightness, but you don't want your render to be too dark because your shadow is going to be too muddy, all right? And I see this a lot, you know, very dark, gloomy renders. You want them to be sparkly, okay? So anyway, this will be, you know, this will be interesting. Now, you need to decide on the focal length of the camera. Focal length of the camera will either compress or distort the image. So let me show you. If I'm gonna change this here, so page down and let's change it to 24 millimeters. If I'm going to lock this camera to view and zoom in, you can see that clearly we have a lot of distortions, you see. We got this keystone effect, which basically what it does, everything that's close to the camera becomes distorted, right? you know, turn on your webcam and move your hand close to it, you'll see what I mean. Your hand's gonna be massive, okay? That's a wide angle lens. Now the opposite of this would be long focal length, which is gonna be like 85, 70, 85, 135. These are all telephoto lenses. And you see that the view now is compressed. It's a bit more orthographic. So now it really depends how you like to shoot. I like to shoot with longer lens because it creates more intimate images. Close-up image for me is more intimate. I like it. I kind of feel like I'm entering the world of the model. Okay, so then you can you know, pick whatever you want. It's actually an artistic choice. It's up to you really. What, you know, what's your style, and I just go with it. You know, if it feels right, it feels right. Okay. Now in this case, I'm probably gonna go with something like 85. So it's gonna be like a middle ground. It looks really natural, a little bit more compressed than 50 mil, and 50 mil basically is the same focal length as our eyes. So the reason why you don't want to mostly shoot in with 50 mil, which is a default settings for Blender, is because that's how we see the world. And the reason why you don't want to do that is because it's boring. Okay, we're used to it. So you want to shock the viewer. You want to go either wider angle like 24, or you want to go higher angle like 85, 135, because we do not see a world like this. All right, we see a world through the 50mm lens, and that's, you know, that's very common for us. So if you see a render with 50 mil, it's just meh. Okay, so you wanna, you know, put some spin on it and go either lower or higher. That's my advice. Now with this framing, what I would probably do, I would try to offset the visual weight of this cube. And the visual weight basically is, think about visual weight as you think about weight in real life. Something is heavy, something is light. So for example, a gray cube is gonna be less heavy than a red cube, because red cube is gonna pull a shit ton of attention. So even if I'm gonna make this cube tiny as hell, but I'm gonna make it, you know, really of a crazy color. So let's go here and let's actually remove this matte, and I'm going to just add some crazy, you know, crazy red matte. Even if this cube is tiny, right, it's gonna have a higher visual weight than this one because it's a saturated warm color, and that's what we are very attracted to, right? Circular shapes gonna have higher visual weight than rectangular shapes. You know, like I said, it's a deep subject, and again, I'm going really deep into that in Rendering University. So again, if you're serious, grab the course. But in our case, what I want to do is I want to offset this visual weight of the cube on the other side, because I want to offset this cube to the left with another element. And the best way to do this is simply add another cube and maybe rotate it in a different way. So this way, maybe even bring it a little bit further away or something like this. And this is going to be cool. Now, again, we need to pay attention to the space around the cubes, which is, like I told you before, negative space. So the trick to good framing is balancing visual weight and creating a pleasing, visually pleasing negative space. So the space around your models. So what you want to avoid, for example, is you want to avoid pushing stuff to the edge of the frame, to the bottom of the frame, like this, because it just feels like you choke in the negative space. Do you see what I mean? You need some breathing, you need some air between them, right? Now, if I'm going to do something like this, it's also going to feel weird, because then we have too much negative space in here. So you start feeling this? So this basically creates a really nice break in here, really nice break in here, larger space between the cubes, which kind of creates a feeling of calmness and sort of kind of like stability, right? Because the closer you get, the more dynamic the image becomes, the more tense you become. Imagine like you're in a crowded area, right? You feel tense, but if you're like in a relaxed area, like a massive, I don't know, open space in the field, you feel relaxed. The same in here, okay? So think about it this way. Another thing that's important is you want to give a bit more bottom than top. So what I mean by that is you want to give more space at the bottom, so more ground, than from the top. So if I move this camera like this, and I see a lot of renders like this, you're choking this render from the bottom. It feels like the cube is about to fall out of the frame. You don't want to do that. You want to give it some ground, some importance. You see, when I move it up, everything feels more elevated, feels more important, feels more essential. There's like a path leading to these cubes into the image. Do you feel that? So this tiny difference, this tiny movement, right, changes the render from meh to wow. Okay, and you can see that the very simple render of two cubes can involve a lot of shenanigans, all right, a lot of movement. It's not easy to master this, but you know, these basics should give you a good head start. Another important thing is that is a background. So this background is way too big. You don't want the background to be so massive, because the larger the background, the more light you are actually obscuring from an image, because if the light is bouncing from the sides, you might be actually blocking the light from entering, you know, from bouncing from your model. So you want to make this background smaller, but when you do that, you can see clearly that we have, you know, our environment is actually showing. So how to fix this? Let me just turn this off here quickly. Where the fuck was it? Filmed. There we go. So the solution here would be to create something called infinite background, and it's really popular in photography. It's a background that kind of curves upwards. So the way you do it is simply go to edge mode, select this one like this, GXX, move it out here, click on this one, Control B, bevel, and create a really smooth, massive bevel here, right? And then you want to smooth it, all right? So now when I'm going to look at this, you see that there's no, I cannot tell where the background ends and where it begins. When it goes up, it's just so smooth, which is why it's called infinite background, right? And this is going to bounce light back onto the model from the back. So it's going to introduce more light. But like I told you, we want to remove anything that's unimportant and unused in the scene. So what you want to do is you want to select all that and you want to delete that. Normally, what I would do, I would cut these sides off as well. But if I do this, we can actually lose some light, because you see light actually is bouncing from this white floor onto the cube and actually makes our objects brighter. So I'm going to keep that, but I don't need my light to be blocked from the back. So this would be good. So this would be a, you know, this would be a decent render, right? So if I'm going to render this, it's going to look really clean. And you can see that the render goes really quickly in cycles, and boom, this is a really nice render. Now let me give you one more tip. Let's say that you wanted to brighten up this corner here, because it's a bit dark here, this left hand side of the cube. So normally what people would do, go here to light, add some area light, move it in here, right, rotate it onto the cube, right, and you know, do something like this. Don't do this, because you're introducing a different quality, different brightness, and different color of light to the scene. You're mixing light. It's not good. What you want to do is you want to reflect the same light that exists in the scene back onto your model, and the way you do that is simply by adding a plane. So let's go into the not called sphere. Let's do the plane. Let's move it in here, right? Let's rotate it on both axes. Let's make it larger. You see what's happening already, right? And add a matte here, okay? Add a white matte. So this plane, what it will do, it will reflect the light back. The light is coming from, remember, it's coming from over there. So when I turn it on, right, again, light is coming from over there, bounces off of this plane, back onto the cube and into the camera. It's called a reflector. So the way you control this, you simply adjust the brightness here and Bob's your uncle, right? So from really being too dark, we can just open it up a little bit. Now the thing you don't want to do is you don't want to make it brighter than this side, because that's your main side. If you're going to make this side brighter, you're pushing the visual weight from here, to the edge of the frame. Do you see what I mean? So when you have reflections in your scene or something that's pulling a lot of attention, you want to either dim it down, fix it, or balance it, because that's a visual weight pulling you away from the main, main area of focus, which is here. Okay, so this is too bright. We want to drop it down so it's not, it's not as dark as it used to be, but it isn't brighter than this face. That's really important. And this would be and that's about it, guys. That's all you need to know about, basics of rendering. If you follow these simple steps, your render is gonna improve dramatically. And like I said, again, if you're really serious about rendering, I highly recommend you grab Rendering University. The link is in the video description, and the course is on our website. I go really in depth over there on rendering. It's several hours long, and you'll learn a shit ton about framing, composition, lighting, visual weight, balancing, you know, post-processing. We create this scene from scratch in Blender. We compose it, you know, we add lightings. Lightings are actually mixed. I have a quite complicated light setup, way more complicated than this here. We have another rendering example with a truck. So there's a ton of talk about lighting over there as well. Also, we covered the IES lighting, like I told you before, the bake textures. So there's a lot of info over there, and you know, people really love the course. So anyway, guys, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.